Hey, y'all, Jared Sandler here. Hope you're having a good day, and I certainly appreciate you clicking on a link to get to this point in your listening experience as we get set for episode 29 of the Just a Sec podcast. And if you've got a second, I'd appreciate if you take the time to share this conversation, perhaps subscribe to the YouTube channel or click that thumbs up button. Maybe you want to comment on the conversation. Maybe you've got a guest you'd like me to interview in the future. You can always interact with me, whether it's in the comments section on Twitter at Jared Sandler, at Jared Sandler _ on Instagram. I would love to hear from you because, of course, this is a conversation podcast, and I'm doing it because I love having conversations and love interacting with all of you. You know, it's funny, if you ask yourself the question, baseball fans or sports fans in general, who's the best shortstop in Major League Baseball? I think some people might say Francisco Lindor. Others might say Washington's Trey Turner. Perhaps people are really buying a lot of stock in San Diego's Fernando Tatis Jr. But the real answer, the right answer, even though this is a subjective conversation, but the right answer might be DFW's Trevor Story. The Rockies shortstop has continued to get better and better. He possesses power and speed and defense, which is obviously important when you're playing the shortstop position. If you take a look at the numbers, I think Trevor Story's got a great argument. And once again, he's from our own backyard here in DFW. So earlier I chatted with Trevor Story, talked about his journey to the big leagues, his record-setting MLB debut back in 2016, getting the chance to play against the Rangers in Arlington, and a lot more. So here we go, episode 29 of the Just a Sec podcast with Colorado Rockies shortstop Trevor Story. One. All right, Trevor, the first thing I like to ask people, it's a generic question, but when you think back to your childhood, what are the things that stand out, whether it's interests, hobbies, influences, experiences, whatever, take in whatever direction you'd like, but when you think back to your childhood, what are the things that stand out?
Yeah, I think for me, my childhood was consumed with sports. And I think, you can say that for a lot of kids growing up in Texas, loving football, loving baseball, loving basketball. I just remember that's what it was for me, man. I wanted to play sports. I wanted to be with my boys and just have fun doing that. And some of the best memories of my life have been that. And, just growing up trying to be like Derek Jeter and Michael Young and, Michael Jordan, all those guys. And that's kind of how it was for me.
Do you remember what pushed you to sports? I mean, I know that it's an easy activity for young kids to get involved in, but do you remember what kind of led you to love sports or what pushed you in that direction?
I think the way I got into sports was my family, and my older brother was, he was always playing ball of some kind, and, I always wanted to be like him and always were doing the things that he was doing. And so that was a big part of it. And I think once I got into it and learned how to play the games and just kind of fell in love with the art of the games and the competition side of it, I think drew me in as well. That's something that's always burned pretty hot in my life. And, being able to do that is the epitome of sports is competing.
Was it always, and I know you mentioned, playing a lot of sports, but was baseball always ahead of the others, or was there another sport that maybe you loved first? How did that dynamic work?
For me, I loved baseball. That was my first love before any other sport. And I played so much as a kid, and I kind of got burnt out, honestly, for a little bit for a couple years. And I remember I took a fall off of baseball and played golf, and I love golf, and those two are probably my favorite hobbies. And I still do keep up with the NBA, and I'm a diehard Cowboy fan, diehard Mavs fan. So I'm locked in on all the sports, but baseball is always the one for me. And especially right when I came back from that break that I took in the fall, made me realize how much I do love it. it hasn't stopped since.
I think it's interesting, Trevor. Your parents both, had jobs that are very giving, whether directly or, like with your father, for instance, being a fireman. That's a job in which he protects others and serves others. First of all, with your father, what was it like growing up with a dad as a fireman? Was that something that you wanted to do, or I imagine you got to spend some time at the station. Just what was that like?
Yeah, my dad is, he's my role model, and I wanted to be just like him. Him and my brother were such great influences on me, and so I wanted to be a fireman when I grew up. When I was a young kid, and once I started playing ball, then I kind of shifted to that, and I knew that's what I wanted to do, and but yeah, some great memories, with my dad and just my family in general, going to the fire station and, watching fireworks on 4th of July. And, I thought it was cool, and I was proud to say that my dad was a fireman paramedic. He saves lives, and, ultimately was putting his life at risk. And, I didn't really realize that at the time, but, to look back on it and see when you get a little bit older, you can appreciate it more for sure.
What was his specific role? I don't claim to be an expert on this, but my understanding is that a part of each team they all have their specific role. What was his? Do you remember?
Yeah, he drove the fire truck. He was the driver, and so we always joke around and say that he's a professional driver. So he's always driving us. When we get the family together, he's the one behind the wheel. So very, very cautious and very safe, and his head's always on the swivel.
Now, you're in a clubhouse now, and it's a tight-knit group, any athletic team is, and it always seems like it's something similar with firefighters and their station, that, they're bonded together by their job and the time they spend together. And I imagine, you were privy to at least understanding that growing up. Was there anything you learned from the camaraderie that firefighters had and the way they seem to support one another that maybe sticks with you today?
Yeah, you're right. It's very similar to, the way we go about our business in professional sports. And, theirs is obviously more serious in the sense that it's life or death. And, I think, that makes you even closer I know my dad is very close with, his best friends are the ones that he met in the department. And, I know he's still close with them to this day. And, just the camaraderie of it and the clubhouse feel of it. I always loved that and always knew that's what I wanted. And, he set the example for me in that way for sure.
All right. Now, your mom is the CEO of Irving Cares, which is an organization that provides all sorts of assistance. So, and it seems like that's as best as I was able to figure out, that's been her background in that sort of world for a while. So I imagine there were some lessons that were learned on her side as well, giving back, doing stuff for others. What were some of the things that your mom tried to impart upon you with her job and what that meant to her and maybe what that might mean to you?
Yeah, it was huge. Both my parents did such a great job of that, growing up in the serving mindset and attitude. And, we're here to help other people who, need help. And, I remember we'd always go to my mom's work and we would volunteer at the food bank. And, we'd be passing out food to families that need it or, toilet paper, just the essentials, and just making sure that people are taken care of. And I remember that. And I remember, kind of realizing that not everybody, is as fortunate as we are. And I think that's been ingrained in me for a long time. And, I appreciate my mom and my dad for showing me that way.
All right. Now, you've mentioned your brother, Tyler, and the influence he had, a really good athlete himself. What sort of things did you learn from him? I'm a younger brother who benefited greatly from the influence of my two brothers, and I could probably talk for hours about it. What are the things that most stand out to you that you learned or benefited from with your relationship with Tyler?
Yeah, my brother was he was a good athlete, man. He was just the injury bug kind of got him a little bit. He wasn't able to play as much as he wanted to, but yeah, he was always pushing me. He was always he he was always beating me up, on the field, and so I took it personally, and I wanted to be as good as him and his friends, and I was always playing up a level or two so that I could be with him, and I think that helped my skills a lot, and that helped my competition level rise to what there was, a couple years older, and I think I'm thankful that he let me hang around, honestly.
What were some of the challenges that you had to deal with growing up, whether in school or athletically, socially? What were some of the things that maybe helped develop or help shape you during that time? And go.
Yeah, I think, growing up, it's the hardships and stuff. My brother helped me a lot. And, my parents raised me to be resilient and to be tough and to know that, things aren't always going to go your way. And, I think sports was huge for that aspect of my life, teaching me how to fail and to be resilient and not giving up. And baseball in particular is the best teacher of that, in my opinion, and because it's a game of failure, and you're going to fail 7 out of 10 times and be one of the best players. And so growing up with sports, I think, was huge for me in learning how to deal with failure and kind of making me a little tougher.
All right, so in high school, you really establish yourself as one of the best players in the country. You get an opportunity to go to LSU, and I think I've read that you remain a big LSU fan to this day, but you ultimately decided to sign and begin your professional career out of high school with the Rockies. What do you remember about that decision? Because LSU's a pretty appealing place, a great program, seems like a good time in Baton Rouge, but I imagine you had dreams of playing professionally, and you had a great opportunity to do that. So was that a tough decision? Was it, when you took a step back, was it an easy decision? What do you remember about that process?
Yeah, that process was, looking back on it was huge, and I'm glad I had the people, I had my family and friends to kind of point me in the right direction. And for me, I always grew up wanting to play in the big leagues and wanting to win a World Series. And, we kind of had a plan about if I was going to get drafted here and the money was right, then that's what we would do. That would kind of make the decision easy for us. But I remember when it came time to make the decision, it was hard for me because I loved LSU, man, and I still do. And I wanted to play ball there, and just the culture and, the atmosphere that whole thing brings is incredible. And I think that, it made it really hard on me to make that decision. And, but yeah, I certainly don't regret the way that I took it. And, at the end of the day, that was the underlying factor, was that I wanted to be a professional baseball player, and I had the chance to do it. And I felt like I was honest with myself enough to feel like I was ready for it.
A part of the recruiting, did you get to go to an LSU football game?
Yeah, I did. I went to a couple. I remember my senior year on my official visit, I think it was, it was number 1 versus number 2, LSU versus Bama in Death Valley. And, it was incredible. The atmosphere, the LSU ended up upsetting them. And, it was a done deal after that. Honestly, for me, I was like, this is the best place in the world. And, it was pretty easy to pick where I was going to go to college.
I go on a college football trip with my buddies every year, and this year was supposed to be Baton Rouge for LSU, Alabama, and I don't know that we're going to end up making that trip, and certainly won't be the same if Tiger Stadium isn't 100% full. But I whenever the time is, I can't wait to go to my first game there. It just seems like an incredible environment.
Yeah, it truly is. It's I think it's the best setting in college football, and yeah, I encourage you to maybe save that experience for when it's full capacity and full throttle.
All right, so Trevor, I remember when you were in Casper, Wyoming, because that same year I was stuck in Great Falls, Montana. Your first professional season as a player was mine as a broadcaster, and we only went to Casper once, and not that Great Falls was anything to write home about, but I know that that league had a few cities, Casper probably being one of them, where maybe the facilities or the town or whatever was wasn't as glamorous. And I think I remember Casper. I could be wrong. I think I remember the field kind of being a little rough, and some of the players on Great Falls talking about how tough of an infield that was. But what do you remember about your time at Casper and maybe some of the challenges of your first professional season?
Yeah, I do remember my time in Casper. That was, obviously my first professional season. I just remember, I was kind of overwhelmed by it all at first, and it took me a little bit to get settled down and into the routine of the whole thing, playing every single day and going through my kind of creating my own routine and trying to lean on that. And, being away from my family for the first time, being away from my girlfriend, who's my wife now, that was tough. And I remember just at the end of that year, man, I was so tired. Like I was just limping home because, my body physically wasn't really ready for that, the demand of it. And, but it sure did teach me a lot about how to go about, every day as a pro and, trying to climb the ladder.
And I got to ask you if you remember this. So, it was one of the highlights, I guess, for me that year. We were in Casper and we threw the Voyagers pitchers threw a combined no-hitter. And to this day, it's the only no-hitter I've ever seen in person. Do you remember that at all? I mean, I know you play a ton of games and, you forget some of the ones that maybe weren't as favorable for you, but do you remember that game at all?
I do. I do vaguely remember it. But like you said, I try to delete those those memories out pretty quick. But yeah, I do remember that.
It's just there's not a lot of people I can bring that up to who'd have any clue who the Casper the Great Falls Voyagers even are.
Right.
Okay, so you talked about climbing the ladder, and you did that. You go from Casper to Asheville, and then you take the next step up to Modesto, and in 2013, I guess maybe, at least statistically speaking, you experienced your first tough year. And I guess what was that experience like? And I read that Troy Tulowitzki was pretty instrumental in helping you bounce back after that. What was that year like, and what was that experience in the offseason like with Troy?
Yeah, that year was tough, man. And I think that, bouncing back from that year had a lot to do with my development in the coming years. Just because, it really taught me how to be true to myself and believe in myself and believe in my swing and believe in the player that I can be instead of, tinkering with so many different things and trying to be someone else's version of myself. And, I learned that. And, once I had to learn it by failing, pretty much falling on my face, hitting 220. And it was tough, man. I just remember those times were not good. And, Tula had a big deal to do with that. He invited me out after that season to Vegas to work out with him. And he really just, just him inviting me kind of gave me that confidence. And, he showed me, pretty much went through his whole off-season routine and the way he goes about his business and the way he works. And that's stuck with me forever and still to this day. And, we ironed some things out, and I'm very thankful to him for doing that.
Do you remember, like, specifically what maybe you took most away from him and just what that experience was like, whether it's, on a personal level or a professional level? Like, what were some of the things that really were significant from that off season?
Yeah. The thing I took from Tulo the most was that, his work ethic, and not only that, but the intensity that he does it with. Every single day is an opportunity to get better, and he really lived by that. And he was obsessed with the game like me, and at the time he was the best shortstop in the game in my opinion. And so he had me leaving there and being like, man, this is the best shortstop in the game, and he's out working every single player in the world. And, I took that from him, and, I'm still running with that now.
All right. So one of the things I also learned is that nutrition is important to you. And I guess that's easy to say. I don't know that anyone's, at your levels come out and said, I hate nutrition. Nutrition isn't important to me. But it seems like maybe it's more so important to you, something maybe you got tied to a little bit earlier than most. How did that start? Because I think like some of the young players, maybe that's one of the things they look back on and say, hey, when I was young, like I ate like crap, and it took me until I was 20 whatever 30 to realize how to take care of my body. How did that develop for you, and why has that been so important for you?
Yeah, that has been a huge part of my career and my life. And I have to give credit where it's due. A lot of people have helped me, and I learned that at a younger age, I think, than most, and I think it's benefited me big time, just because I know the implications that it has when you don't eat well, and just your total feeling of body when you're not eating well as opposed to when you are, and it makes a huge difference. And if you add that up over a long period of time, then you're kind of feeding your body with the right oil, and you're going to be a lot better off, the further you go. And, shout out to my wife. She cooks for me all the time, 2 to 3 meals a day. And, so it's as much as a sacrifice as it is for her as it is for anybody else. And, a lot of people have helped me realize the importance of that.
What's her best meal?
Ooh, right now, I think her best meal is Taco Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday, I like it.
Yeah, with turkey breasts and corn and veggies. So yeah, we're gonna eat that tonight, actually.
What's the food that maybe you've had to give up that was like the toughest to part ways with, or the one that maybe you haven't totally given it up, but like it's way more rare of an occurrence for you to eat that food than it used to be?
Yeah, the sweets, man. I just love sweets. It's tough to put those down. I only touch them on Sunday, my cheat day. So it's really hard to refrain the other days, but it makes me feel good about eating a lot of sweets on Sunday night. So chocolate chip cookies in particular.
There you go. Your wife make them, or just store bought?
Store bought, but my wife bakes them. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So I want to move ahead to 2016 spring training. You're competing for, a chance to be the opening day shortstop. And I think I could be wrong, but that's the first spring training where that was really on the table. What was that spring training experience like for you? I know now, not that you don't take it seriously, but now for you, it's more just getting your body right, getting your work in so that you're ready. Then I guess it was maybe a little bit different because you were trying to win a job. And won.
Yeah, I remember going into the off season of 15, going into 16. I knew I had a chance to win the job. I thought possibly I was going to get called up at the end of 15, but I was on the 40-man, so it didn't make sense. And I knew Tulo had just been traded, and it was me and one other guy that finished in AAA, and it was between us. And I remember that off season I was full systems go, and that was my goal, was to win the job out of spring. So I showed up as ready as I've ever been, and I had a really good spring, and I felt like the job was mine to take, and I know no one was going to give it to me. So showing up there, and I knew the guys previously from big league camp before, and I felt a little more comfortable, and those guys made me feel like a part of the team, and I think that had a lot to do with it as well.
All right, so 2016, big year, and your first big league season got off to a pretty special start. A home run in 4 straight games. I think you had 6 home runs during that stretch, and had all sorts of rookie records and maybe shortstop specific records. At any point were you like, is this real? Is this actually going on? I thought it was supposed to be a little harder than this. What was that first week like for you?
Yeah, it was an incredible whirlwind, man. I just remember, kind of sitting back and being like, man, is this really happening? It doesn't seem real, it doesn't feel real, but it's all happening. And I remember just trying to be in the moment as much as I could, because I knew that what was happening was special, and I certainly didn't expect, to kind of pop off like that early. But I knew I had that in me, and I was always very confident. But to start like that was not really in the mindset.
Now, I guess to quickly jump forward, you recently became the fastest shortstop to 100 home runs, getting there even quicker than Alex Rodriguez, who is one of the most prolific home run hitters in baseball, regardless of position. But you also have the speed component, and I know you're young, and maybe bodies change as you get older, but right now you've got that rare ability to bring power and speed. Is that something you take pride in? Is it something that you have to work on to maintain both? And I guess, is there, with your body, is there a challenge in not compromising one for the other, or vice versa? Or is it just something that's always kind of been natural for you?
I am very prideful in kind of trying to be that two-way player with speed and power. But it's tough. It's tough on the body. It's over 162 games. You feel pretty beat at the end of it. Trying to steal a lot of bases and do the speed aspect of it. You're pretty much running as hard as you can down the line every time, and so it does. It takes a toll on your body, but I love that challenge of it. And me and my trainer Bobby Stroop, we've been very locked in on that, especially this off season and the one before that, because we want to keep growing. We want to we want to advance this thing. We don't want to just be stagnant, and because we feel like there's a little more in the speed tank for me, and so we tailor my workouts to that, and trying to be as well-rounded as I can. And I think if we do that, then I'll be able to show both sides of that.
All right, so I remember in 2016 there was a lot of excitement, for you to come and play in Arlington, and then you ended up suffering an injury, so that had to wait until 2018. And I remember speaking to you before those games, and I don't remember if it was the first or second game of the series, but we had you on the pregame show, and you just, like, I don't know. I know you're a pretty even keel person, but it seemed like there was some added excitement to get to play at Globe Life Park, and you ended up hitting a home run in the, I think if I remember, the finale of that series, which I'm sure was pretty cool for you. What was that experience like? You've only had 3 games there, and I guess now that park is no longer in circulation, but that's the park you, like a lot of us who grew up in the Metroplex, grew up going to. So what was it like to actually get a chance to play there and even just from a hitting standpoint, have some success there?
That was special, man. That was, in 2016 when the schedule came out, I had that one circled. Just like, because you said that's, I grew up in Irving, so I grew up a diehard Rangers fan, and, I knew I couldn't wait for the day that I got to play there and experience that. And, for it to be taken away in 16 because of my injury, I was devastated about that, because it happened like the road trip before we were going to come. And I remember I was really down about that. And, we didn't come back in 17, but in 18 we did. And I remember I was just so pumped up for that. I was playing well, and like you said, I was able to have a little success in that park, and to be able to hit a home run was incredible in front of like my family and friends. I had probably 100 people there, and kind of just came full circle for me growing up, going to those games, and watching the Rangers, and coming there and playing in front of all my friends and family was something I'll never forget.
I think the game you homered on, I could be wrong, I think it was Father's Day, which I'm sure maybe added a little more to it. But did you get that ball, or do you have anything to kind of commemorate your time getting a chance to play there, or are you not someone who collects stuff like that? Any takeaways from that series?
Yeah, it was on Father's Day because we were wearing the blue uniforms, and we had special cleats. So I hit the home run in those cleats, and I took them out and signed them and gave it to my dad on Father's Day, and that's just something special that we can always look back on, and just to know that it happened here was special too.
All right. One of the things that I think stands out, and it's pretty evident just in talking to you, you approach things in a way, competitive, and we mentioned even keel, and it seems like you play a position of leadership at shortstop, but not every shortstop is a leader in that way. But that seems to be something that's important to you. How do you go about leading? Well, what's important to you as a leader, and how you carry out maybe those responsibilities?
Yeah, I think it's something that that I'm growing into. Younger, it's with not a lot of service time, it's tough to like stand up and say something, and that's not really my personality, anyways. I'm more of a soft-spoken guy, lead by example type. But the more that I see how our team works and how guys look up to like guys like myself and Nolan and Chuck, and I realize that there's opportunity to be that kind of leader. And for me, it's mainly by doing as I say, doing it, going out there and showing guys how to do it. And but the more I get along with this thing, I think the conversations need to be had. Whether it doesn't have to be in a team setting, but it can be behind closed doors or in the clubhouse somewhere about things that I see. Or I want guys to be able to come up to me and ask me like, hey, what do you do here? How do you feel about this? And just have that open line of communication is, I think, the biggest part of trying to be a good leader.
Who are some of the, I know obviously we've touched on Troy Tulowitzki, and you're getting to play currently with some guys who've been in the league and found success, but who are some of the guys in addition to Troy who really helped you early on, or guys who took you under their wing, or even if they didn't, just from your own observations, you were able to learn from and use as an aid in some way?
Yeah, Nolan for sure. Nolan Arenado, he's been probably the biggest influence on me out of anybody. Just we have a good bond because we play together every day. On the left side, we take pride in trying to be the best left side in the game, and we challenge each other, man. We push each other, and I think it's so important for players to have that. And I think without him, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. And Nolan, he's always been that guy for me, and also Glenn Allen Hill has taught me so much about the game that I'm not sure that I would have picked up from anybody else. And special coming from him. He's a player, former player that has been through it and knows the struggle of it, and knows how hard this game is. And those two guys are probably the most influential on me.
How do you're a young player, and you've got so much going on now, but you've got a future and all this. How do you balance thinking about the now and thinking about the future? I know a lot of people say, hey, just take it one day at a time, and maybe for some it's easier than others, but is that, I imagine that is your mindset, but is there a balance to that, or do you just totally not allow yourself to think about anything beyond the next 24 hours? What's your approach with that?
No, I think there is definitely a balance to it, and it's tough because you kind of teeter-totter one way and you need to push yourself back the other way. Because for me, it's the easy thing to do is to go in there and swing for 5 hours, to play baseball for a long time each day. And honestly, I want to play for a long time, so I can't have that many days of that type of workload add up on me, and it won't be good for my body. And it's something that I do struggle with, but the hardest thing for me to do is to kind of take my swings and step out and let those be, and not overwork myself and put myself into bad habits. And but I think that is key to trying to have longevity in my career, and that's something that I've gotten good at. And so it's really about working smarter and not harder right now.
All right, what are some of the things that Trevor Story most enjoys away from baseball, off the field, either by yourself or with friends, whatever?
Yeah. So I love shoes. I'm a big sneakerhead. I collect shoes all the time. Really only Nikes and Jordans, because that's what I grew up on. And I love golf, man. I'm obsessed with golf. Been play a lot in the off season, and haven't played as much as I want now due to the quarantine. But love golf. I love going to the movies with my wife. That's something that we always do on an off day. And just anything active, really. That's where we keep it to. But golf and sneakers and the movies are my thing.
You got a favorite sneaker or one that you had to work really hard to get or find or track down?
Yeah. Not so hard to track down, but the Jordan Concord 11s, I think, are the best looking shoe out there. And, there's so many for me to pick from. It's hard to say. I love 1s, 4s, and 11s, but if I had to pick one, it would be the Jordan 11 Concords.